So I want to give you a good example of how you can accidentally test a module outside of the scope for your test. In our example, we are designing a piece of code to place a button within an HTML document. This means that we will have to insert this button into the document's body tag. So let's go into our test. I've named this class HTML controller. So we have here some HTML. We are going to create a controller. We will pass this HTML into the controller's insert button in body. This is going to return an HTML document. And then we can run an assertion on it. If we go into the controller's code, we accept a string. We parse this string as HTML. We create a new button with the text "click me," and then we insert this into the document's body tag and return the document. So again, let's go back. I'm going to show you how painful this can be when you're testing things like HTML, because in my opinion, it's one of the stronger and easier identifiable cases where you accidentally test something you shouldn't. So let's run this test, and it's going to fail. And we can see why. If we go into here, you can see there's spacing, right? So let's just humor. Let's just, let's go back here. Let's just humor this IDE, right? And what we'll do here is we'll copy and paste, and we'll run it again. And fine, now we're good, right? But now, first of all, just look how crazy this code we had to write with these slash ends and all this sort of stuff. We're comparing strings, and it's just brittle. And I'll show you why. We'll go into insert button and body. Now, the spec was that we just insert a button, right? What happens if we change the text to "click me" and then put a period right there? If we go back into this test and we run it, well, if we look at the difference again, now we have this, they're not equal anymore. And to tell you the truth, in this case, our customer doesn't care what the text in the button is. They care that there's a button in it. They don't really care that there's, "click me" within the button. They care that there is a button. So how do we write code that if we change the text within the button, how do we write code and write assertions in a test? Well, we are actually testing this document.html function accidentally here. What we can do instead is we can get the body, and then what we can do is get children, or that's whatever is children, and there's going to be an element, so we'll get the first. And what we can do is there a way to get type here, or tag name? Tag name. Now we're basically saying document body, give us the body's children, give us the first child, which is this, and we are asking for the tag name, which is button. And what we can do here is get rid of all this code and assert that it is a button. We run it again, we're good to go. Now, if we were to take this a step further, we could start adding attributes to this element. Maybe an ID, maybe some sort of, CSS to it. And we don't really care what that CSS is or what that ID is. But if we were to use the other way we were testing, that was brittle and actually comparing the text, like the actual string text, we would have to be constantly updating this test. We have just asked, within this HTML that we insert a button into, is there a button within the body? Now we are free that if our code changes the way we construct a button, any attributes we may add to the button, this test will still pass, and we don't have to do any work to update it. Now there is a rule that we've kind of danced around here that I haven't actually said out loud for testing. But when you're testing, you may use other people's codes. You may import that's the word there, an artifact or a library, a piece of code somebody else has written. In our example, document, JSoup, and element, and also document body, blah, 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 these come from the JSoup packages. And I've imported these. When you're testing, you assume that these packages that you are importing and you didn't write do work, that they're actually correct and they're valid. The reason being, if you start testing if these things are valid, you're going to have a very bloated test suite. And we assume that these JSoup classes are correct and that they are tested. This gives us a kind of hierarchical view of testing, so that the boilerplate code that we get from the document and the JSoup stuff we assume is tested, and then our code utilizes these classes, therefore it needs to be tested as well. If you start testing other people's code, again, you can get some brittleness, or you can have a really bloated test suite or collection of tests. So I recommend that you try to assume that the code that you've imported from a different place works.